Seek Outside is an American company producing lightweight, versatile tents and titanium stoves. The Big Woods Bucks team and their friends have hunted the Adirondacks with Seek Outside hot tents and have found that it is the best way to get back into the wilderness areas and have a remote hunt. With few roads and hiking trails is the only way to access the extensive backcountry of the Adirondacks, your pack needs to be as light as possible. Seek Outside's lightweight tents and stoves enable you to get back into the most remote country and hunt mature Adirondack bucks that likely have never seen a human being. Use code BWB at checkout on SeekOutside.com and get 10% off your Seek Outside gear. Good luck on your remote hunt in the Big Woods.
Welcome to the Adirondack Hunt Podcast, a Big Woods Bucks production. In this podcast, the Big Woods Bucks crew from New York sits down and discusses all things hunting, and even a little fishing, within the blue line. 6 million acres of old-growth forest and few roads make the Adirondacks one of the most challenging places in the country to hunt. From Iroquois and Algonquin deer drives to the early days of Adirondack guiding to tracking with a GoPro, the team discusses the history, legends, and lore of these ancient mountains. Along the way, the team interviews top Adirondack hunters. From well-known legends to little-known local legends, homing in on what it takes to be successful in these unforgiving woods.
Sorry.
All right, welcome to the Adirondack Hunt Podcast. I'm here with Mark Scheeren,
Hi.
a.k.a. Scheeren.
Shireen. It is not Shireen.
Yeah, here in New York, we pronounce Mark's name properly.
Thank you.
Scheeren.
Sheeran.
I mean, Scheeren. I just said Scheeren. Austin Scheeren.
Howdy.
All right, and Kevin Stone's here.
How's it going?
All right, so it's a beautiful day. We're here at Morningside Cabins in Minerva, New York.
Which is awesome.
Which is awesome. Just an amazing spot. If you're looking for a place to get away in the Adirondacks for
Or
a
to
summer
hunt out
trip
of.
or fall, it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. All right, today we want to talk about our deer stories for the year. We talked a little bit last time about you guys' hunt out of the Seek Outside tent, your remote camp. Was that your first time doing a remote camp, Mark?
Yeah, so let me give a little background. So I grew up in the woods and grew up not knowing what good equipment was. I didn't really have any mentors. I had my older brothers, but we were all just farmers and just, pretty much outlaws, really, just kind of doing our own thing. I didn't even have a hunting license till I was like 21, and I hunted since I was 10.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's just the way we grew up. Nobody cared. It was the 70s, early 80s. So I had a really good skill set from that, but I never had good equipment. So my son is like the equipment guru, and then I got involved, obviously, after I was 36 years old there's a point to this, 36 years old with Big Woods Bucks, and I started to get good equipment. So I had hunted remotely. Literally, I would go in the woods, wrap myself in a tarp on the ground, and sleep in torrential pouring rain. And I mean, it was totally, I think about that I used to do, the stuff I used to do. I got to stop swearing. And it's just outrageous. So I had this idea in my head that it was going to be awful because I just tortured myself for all these years, but I loved being out there so much. I could just literally wrap myself in a tarp, build a fire. Me and Bob, my hunting buddy, you all know him, team member Bob Dunbar, he would catch fish. I was never a good fisherman. He would catch the fish, and we would just cook them over a fire, and we lived in the woods. I mean, it was crazy. But it was torturous, too. So when Austin was like, we're going to do the Seek Outside thing, I'm like, oh, God. Really? Now I'm at that point, 52, turning 53. Do I really want to sleep out in the ditch? Right? Sleep in the ditch. That's right. So when he got all the equipment ready, he's like, Dad, it's going to be really cool. It's going to be really good. And I'm like, no, oh my God. So I invested in the equipment. I said, send me the list. I'll do it. I'll invest, but I'm really thinking this is going to suck. Well, it was awesome. It was totally life-changing, and now I'm totally hooked. It's actually what I wanted to be doing when I was a child. It actually is the dream. Now I'm like going every couple weekends in. I'm cutting wood. I'm like setting it all up. I got stuff hanging from trees. It's just awesome. It's just ridiculous. I feel like a kid again. So
it's like the perfect trade-off because I'll pack in all the crazy weight when we go in.
Yep.
But he goes and cuts all the firewood and does the scouting.
Yeah. It's been a really good partnership, and I didn't shoot my buck in the remote camp. Austin shot his the first day we were in there. Then you had asked in a previous podcast about, did the Seek outside deal with the snow? Well, we got a blizzard. We got 18 inches of snow one night. We had to get out of there because the snow was getting so deep. I didn't think I was going to be able to carry everything out. So we ended up carrying it out in the blizzard at the tail end of that. And it withstood all of that. I've been out. I was also out with my first foray, and then I'll stop talking. With Dave Williams was kind of my introduction to the Seek Outside thing. And that was rougher because I didn't have the equipment. So that was a little more akin to what I had experienced. I was freezing cold. I didn't have good stuff, so.
And there's, by the way, folks, there's a good article that Mark wrote about that trip that I'll dig up and put in the YouTube link, description.
Yeah, and actually that's the one where I fell through the ice. That was in a windstorm. I fell through the ice of a pond, and I had to swim down and go get my gun, and it almost killed me.
Oh,
but the tent saved my life. The having that stove all set up with the wet fire in it saved my life.
And your Big Woods Bucks wool jacket.
Yes, having the wool on was. If I didn't have that on, I wouldn't be talking today. So, and that was me being stupid. I fell through the ice, got out, realized my gun was down there, and I went swimming down and got it. And that, in a wicked, cold, windy day, bad idea. But it ended up okay. So my experience with this whole thing has been varied all over the map, but I can tell you that the tent is awesome. The situation is awesome. Plus, I'm with the bucks. You walk out the tent and you're in. We're about 4.5 miles in. And it's just great. So it was a great. I'll tell my deer story at the end, though. So that's it.
Yeah, as far as remote camp goes, I know that you can find deer 5 miles in. You can find deer 50 yards from the road. My dad wanted to go in because he liked to live in the woods. He really likes that connection to the woods. I just liked an excuse to use new gear.
That's true.
I'm a gear nut, so I'm like, I get to get a whole bunch of new gear and go use it for 2 weeks. That's awesome. And that's what I did.
Yeah, he's great at it, too. Really.
And then, the first day I ended up shooting that buck. And
that was the first day of
yeah.
Oh, that's right. You guys had gone back for 2 weeks.
We packed in.
You allotted 2 weeks?
Yeah, 2 weeks.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, we packed in, set up camp and everything, spent the rest of the afternoon and evening in the tent. I didn't sleep at all because I hadn't quite figured out how to get comfortable yet. And then the next day I had shot that buck.
Wow. Yeah, now it's coming back to me. I'm like, it's like, all right, see you guys in 2 weeks. Like, good luck. And then it's just like 12 hours later, it's like,
buck down.
Your vacation just started.
So, like Wes talked, a couple episodes ago, was saying like even if you tag out early, like you can still bear hunt and all that, shoot coyotes or whatever. So I still have my gun with me. I just ran around in the snow looking for a track for him, and I was like, if I run into a bear or something, I'll shoot it. But if I find a big buck track, it doubles the odds,
of him cutting one.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I was like,
that's a good idea.
That's what I did for like 2 weeks, and then finally, when we come out because of the big snowstorm there, and I had enough. I was pretty tired at this point. My son was sick. I was like, I better get home. So like, tomorrow you just go out and do your thing. So we grabbed breakfast early in the morning. Then he went out, and I was like, I hated it because I was like, there's no way, like he's gonna end up shooting one. I'm gonna miss it because I'm gonna be at home. And that morning he shot one. I was on my way home. I got down towards Warrensburg, and my inReach went off. Said he shot one. I was like, damn it! Turned the car around, went right back up the mountain.
That's awesome.
So you guys had quite the pack out too. I mean, there was 2 feet of the snow on the ground.
80 pounds on my back.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah.
It was terrible.
It was rather
I have a bad
unpleasant.
back, and that was one of the reasons I was really afraid. I have some of the nerves in my leg are gone, so I have sort of a club leg, and I said, I don't know if I can do this. So I practiced all year to get in good enough shape to do it. And on the way out, luckily he's a pack mule. I probably only had 55, 60 pounds on my back, but I'm an old broken dude. And I told him, I said, we got up and over the mountain and slogging through that snow. And I said, Austin, all I'm going to do is count 30 steps at a time. So I literally looked at my feet and would go 1, 2, 3, and I get to 30 because I knew 30 was about where I'd be burning so bad I couldn't walk anymore. And I just stopped. 1, 2, and we got out by midday. It was all right.
Yeah. It was deep snow around.
It was
there.
deep.
Even Rick and it was a complete animal, was saying, "Oh, it's tough going."
Yeah.
So
and we were closer to the Tug Hill Plateau.
Yeah, we were up in.
We were buried, and there was more
20
coming.
Inches.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah, it sucked.
Oh, and by the way, just for those people who aren't familiar with the Adirondack regulations, the reason they had to pack out is because you're not permitted to leave tent stuff up year round. And in fact, to stay longer than 3 days in one location. This is just information for you if you decide to do something like a remote tent. If you're going to stay longer than 3 nights, you need a permit. You need to actually go to the forest ranger and say exactly where you're going to be. You need to find a spot. I believe it's 200 feet from water. I think there's several other criteria, but to do it right, you really want to make sure you're doing it right for your own safety and for to protect the resource. And you have to bring everything out at the end of the season. Yep. So that's why they were hiking out and 2 feet of snow. They had to get their stuff out.
All
of there.
of it. Yeah, it was rough.
But what's great yesteryear, the days of yore where you'd have to carry out a 40-pound campus wall tent that was soaking wet from being in the freezing cold rain for 6 weeks at that point. Back in the old days, to seek outside, we still had heavy packs, but we're talking about maybe a 15-pound tent, or probably even less, probably like a 10-pound.
So it's like my tent's like 7.5 pounds with the stove.
Like a 50-pound wall
with
tent,
the stove.
so
yeah.
You're much
it's with
better
the
off.
stove.
Yep.
You can go even lighter too if you get Dyneema. I got the silk nylon like yours. If you get the Dyneema fabric, it's even lighter.
Yeah, you are
like the whole.
You are a gear nut.
He is.
Just buy the thing and put it up and use it.
So let's talk about your hunt, and then we'll swing on back to me shooting mine on the last day.
So I guess I'd just jump into how the season went. I guess first, I had shot 2 does and a buck with the bow. Then came up here and there was no food in the areas I hunt, so immediately went into swamps and started poking around in there, running trail cameras. November 9th, I got snow. I took the day off and hunted. There was only like an inch of snow. I followed a big one around all day. Ended up catching up to him just at the end of the day, and he kind of got me. I was really close to killing that deer. But so anyway, fast forward, then I went to Maine. Came back, and the first day back is when I shot my buck here. That was December 1st. It's actually kind of a funny story because I went in to check these cameras, and there's 3 big signposts at this one spot, and I knew there was some good bucks in that area. And go into that signpost, and just before I get to that signpost, the runway that goes down past them, there's a nice buck tracking. So I start following him down, and he goes to the camera, and he's like a 12-inch wide 8-pointer or whatever, 2-year-old buck. And I decided, I'm gonna go try to look for something else. I had pretty good snow, and it was gonna thaw out throughout the day. It was dripping out of the trees like just a deery day, you know.
Good day.
And I just went up over the hill on that runway, got up into the hardwoods, and I kind of stopped, and I actually had a sandwich right there. It was only like 9 o'clock, and I kept hearing something, but I didn't know what it was. I thought it was the stuff dripping out of the trees, like mind game,
Yes.
So I packed my stuff up, and what it was actually a nice buck coming. I only took like 5 steps, and there he goes, right? And he was behind a blowdown. I tried to pick a hole, and just couldn't make it happen for whatever reason. So I sat back down, gave him like 45 minutes because it was super early. And when I had seen him go, this will kind of go into the later part of the story, but when I had seen him go, it was just a big, dark, deep-chested buck, good rack. It looked like to me, at that moment, it looked like a really good buck. So get on his track, follow him. He goes up through this swamp. All of a sudden, there's a bunch of bucks in there, right? And they've been here or there, and old tracks, new tracks. So I'm trying to sort this out, but I'm trying to keep moving on him because I know I had given him 45 minutes, and he was still running at that point. And there was other bucks had been chasing does. There's running tracks everywhere. So thought I was on the right buck. And to this day, I don't know for sure if, my mind had just seen that buck was bigger than it was or what. But anyway, I get going on this buck track out of there, and it starts walking, and it goes up on top of this, not real high. It might go up 800 feet or so, and it kind of levels off up there. It's hardwoods, and he's feeding on some mushrooms and feeding around a log. I'm like, creep, and I know he's right here, The smoke's the track is smoking fresh. So I come to a bed, and he's walking out of the bed. Immediately starts feeding again. I'm like, he's right here, So I got my grunt call out, and I turned my camera on. I had my GoPro on, and I grunted a few times. I'm just sneaking. I grunt a few times, and I heard something. There was a big ledge up to my left, and I heard something up there, and I thought it was ice falling off the ledge. And I look up there, and as I kind of look like up to my left, he's standing up out of his bed. And I saw his rack immediately, and I put it right on his chest, and I shot, and it first shot drilled him. I shot 2 more times as he was coming down to me. And, he'd expired right there. And I got up to him, and it was just a 15-inch wide 6-pointer, no brow tines. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, going back, if I had just seen that buck go and thought it was a lot bigger than it was. If you would ask me and I didn't kill that deer, what buck I would have said I saw a 4, 5, 6-year-old buck. I mean, the thing just looked enormous, but it could have been my mind playing. You never know when they're running like that. You don't know what you're really shooting at or anything.
What'd you shoot him with?
That was a pump 30-06. Yep, that was the second buck I've shot with the pump. So I'm going back to the bar this year though, as Mark knows.
Yeah, yeah. So talk a little bit about that. Because it's good for people to know when they with their equipment that you can run into some snags and to be aware of that.
Yeah. So I bought after seeing Big Woods bucks and reading some books and whatever else a couple years ago, I bought the pump. Up until then, I'd hunted with some bolt actions, shot a few bucks with them, but mainly I'd hunted with a Browning Bar 270. And I had phenomenal luck with it. It just seemed to kill deer, bears, whatever. So fast forward, I bought that pump. I shot a nice buck with it in 2022, I think it was. And then this year I shot a bear and a buck with it. But it just seems to me like that pump, I don't get the animals in the scope like I can with the bar, as quickly, finding the target and making a shot, whatever. It just seems like deer slip away from me sometimes, where I know from previous encounters with my bar that buck would have had a hole in it or whatever. I just feel like it would have, I had shot deer with my bar that I don't ever remember looking through the scope. That's how good the gun I felt like I could shoot it like a shotgun,
Yes, yeah.
Actually, my first big buck that I shot in the Adirondacks was an 11-pointer, and I never remember looking through the scope to kill that deer. The pump, it just doesn't feel like, I kind of got short arms, I don't know if that has something to do with it with, using the pump. It just doesn't seem like I shoot it as well as my bar, so I'm going back to a bar this year, going back to what works well for me. I think the moral of the story is if you have a gun that fits you and works for you and it's proven for you, whether it's a lever action, it's a pump, it's an automatic, it's a bolt action, use that gun and don't stray from it. There's no reason to.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk out there about you need this, you need that. Well, if it works for you and you're killing most of the deer you're seeing, most of the bucks you're seeing, don't go away from it.
Yeah, I think that's true. I always tell people, don't be me. Don't be the guy that tries to make a pump work for 12 years and miss a whole gargantuan amount of bucks, So I can talk a little bit about my buck. So it was a weird thing. I came back from camp. I have a weird stat is that I've shot 10 bucks by tracking, right, that I've killed. I've shot out a lot more. But 7 of them are dead in their bed, right? So that's an oddly high rate for that. And for a long time, I just thought it was just an odd thing. But then it comes to a point to where you start to realize that that's just your style, something about that. Like a lot of times I know hunting with Hal and stuff, and other people, they have very different ways of doing things. So what I've developed, and I think this is important to say to people, I just did a post that when the stagger of a big buck track gets narrow, that buck is moving very fast. And I said, what do? You should match the cadence of the track by speeding up. Now, I think that's true for a lot of people. What's interesting about what I do now is I don't do that. I go one speed until the last 100 yards. If I can figure out that he's going to lay down to the best of my ability, I literally just walk in the woods at one speed, and I do it all day long. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I even eat. I'll stop quick, and I'm eating as I go, just taking a walk in the woods, looking as far as I can ahead, because I can't tell you the amount of times I've just walked up on the buck laying down. Mm-hmm. And because I'm so relaxed now, and I'm not trying to overthink it, and that has changed everything for me in the last 4 or 5 years, where it's gotten easy for me. Now, Rick Labby would say that's insane, right? So you have guys that are super physical, like Neil and Rick are by far the most physical guys I've ever met, and super successful, because if you match super physicality with really a savant-like ability to read the track and all these different qualities, well, that's why they kill giant bucks all the time, mm-hmm. and they're really great at it. So you have all the factors. I don't have that. Mm-hmm. I'm 54 and half broken. I have a half bum leg. I got a bad back, and I can push myself, but the reality of my body is what it is, and I had to find a way. So I basically, I shot at 2 bucks that was still hunting with my son close by, and it just didn't work out. I was really shooting at running deer through some pretty thick stuff, and it just didn't work out. But it was great, right? And then it was getting down to the last day, and my other stat is that out of those 10 bucks, 7 are on the last day. So I mean, this is weird stuff.
Yeah.
So what it really means for me is when I get serious, when I realize that it's time to make it happen, and I go into a zone where I am super comfortable, I slow down. I don't speed up. I used to speed up. When I would doubt myself, I'm an aggressive guy. I grew up terribly in a bad place, so I get aggressive, and that never worked. So I taught myself to ratchet back all that and sort of suck. I suck all that energy back into myself, and I go, just chill. And it has worked so well. I chased that buck through, all these little hummocky sort of 30-foot little hills in a spruce bog that I'd tracked a big buck earlier in the year, actually 2 giant bucks, and almost shot one. And I said, boy, this is a special spot.
That area is a kill zone.
Oh, it's awesome.
It's crazy.
It's such a great spot, but it's not a great spot if you're a hardwood guy. It's all this sneaky little, and with my style of going super slow, and I got snow on the ground, I just was like, shit's dying today. I mean, I just knew. And this is another point I want to make. I'm sorry to commandeer so much time, but there's a really important thing about the Adirondacks that I think is people need to know. One of the biggest racked bucks I've ever seen, shot at, and experienced, and I have his sheds, and you can read about it in my book. It's called The 7 Mistakes Buck. Had feet that were smaller than the buck I shot this year. Mm-hmm. Those sheds are 162 inches. That buck barely had a stagger, looked like a doe. I almost didn't take that track, and I had 7 encounters with this buck, and I got his sheds. And he would run through the trees, and you would just hear stuff clacking for sorry about the swearing. I'll get better at this. You would hear his antlers clacking for half a mile for 20, 30 seconds. Just clack, 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 because it was just so massive.
Yep.
And what I realized about all of this is when you get on an Adirondack buck track, and Hal had this problem in the beginning, what is a big track? I don't know. I can't tell you. Now, of course, Joe Donito will say, and it is absolutely 100% true, he says an oh shit track, so I can swear there. And that is, we call it a cell phone track, right? A good-sized cell phone track, square toe, big dew claws hanging out of the back, just like a main track, right? Great. rare as hen's teeth. There are just not a lot of those. And here's the deal. There are a lot of giant racked bucks that are 140 pounds.
Yep.
They don't have a big stagger. They're not long deer. They're very small. And so a lot of times I take a track in the Adirondacks that most people would look at like I'm crazy. So when I took the track this year, it swung the other way. He had big feet, long legs, but you know what? That buck was 140 pounds. And he had he was a 2.5-year-old. I would have guessed when I saw his track, oh, this is going to be a big one. Mm-hmm. So follow what you can in the Adirondacks. Don't be looking for 10 days for that special track, unless you want to spend 10 days looking for hen's teeth. Fine. Or if you're super physical, you can probably find those big buck tracks more often. I'm not. I've learned to be less picky, but I've seen giant racked bucks every season.
You have to look at other things on the track, too.
That's a great point.
Where he's going, where he can and can't fit, what he's knocking off.
Yes.
Where his antlers are when he's feeding.
Do you guys look for... I've kind of just picked this up the last few years, and my buddy Isaac turned me on to this. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but I have the last few years. The real old bucks will start pointing their feet out a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Here or there.
Yeah.
And I noticed I noticed that a lot more here than anywhere else I've been in the Adirondacks. When you get those older bucks, they start really pointing their feet out. Maine, I didn't notice that. When I was there, I've been in New Hampshire, I didn't have snow there, but just following tracks on dirt and bare ground and whatnot, I didn't notice that as much over there either.
I think the weight starts like pushing
That's
on
what
the
it
hips
is.
and starts rotating them feet out.
It's just like big men.
Yep.
You look at tracks and your feet are out like this. When you were a kid, they were straight.
Yeah.
And your back and your hips move out and the weight gets you.
Yep.
For sure. I think that those are old bucks.
Yeah.
When you see that, that's you
Real
definitely
old.
check. Yeah.
Gotcha.
But I've had does, as you guys know. You track all day and you find out it's a doe, and it's a wicked shocker, and that still happens to me in the Adirondacks. I shot at a buck, I don't know, a few years ago. Boston was right near me then too. The doe was twice the size of this buck, and this buck was a nice 8-pointer, and he was walking with her up a mountain. I had the muzzle loader, and just hit some twigs and stuff and deflected the bullet, but she was twice the size. I mean, she was a massive, massive animal. And he was a nice buck, a nice 3.5-year-old 8-point, So you just don't know what you're going to run into.
Those of you who listen to the podcast will know that here at Big Woods Bucks, in the off-season, we're big into brookie fishing. If you're going to be brookie fishing in the Adirondacks, there's only one way to do it right, and that's with a lightweight canoe. Our friends at the Adirondack Canoe Company are making traditional lightweight pack canoes. Adirondack Canoe Company's canoes are the finest made canoes in the Adirondacks, the Northeast, or the country for that matter. When I go brookie fishing, I bring the Adirondack Canoe Company's Haystack canoe. The Haystack is based on the John Henry Rushton designed Wee Lassie, which has proved to be a worthy haul over the last 150 years. Worked into the Adirondack culture of brookie fishing, this canoe is a fantastic fishing platform and light enough to carry wherever you go. So if you're in the market for a lightweight canoe, go to the Adirondack Canoe Company and check out their stuff. We'll see you out on the brookie ponds.
Hi, everyone. Team member Mark Scheeren here. Some of you might not know that my day job is coaching people on how to move past addictions. I've been doing this for more than 34 years now, and I absolutely love providing the most effective method for moving past addiction in the world. It's called the Solution to Addiction Workshop and the Solution to Addiction Coaching. Both of these life-changing programs are presented by me and my team here at the Freedom Model. If you're someone who wants to be free from an addiction, but you don't want to go to daily support meetings, rehabs, or be on replacement medications for the rest of your life, give us a call at 888-424-2626. Or you can go to www.thefreedommodel.org. Your first 30-minute consultation is free. Here's that number again, 888-424-2626. I look forward to helping you. Take care.
Hey, Hal here. Just wanted to tell you we're excited about our partnership with Minus 33. Minus 33 specialized merino wool base layers for outdoor enthusiasts, from tops and bottoms to hats, socks, gloves. And our gear is going to keep you warm and comfortable no matter what adventure you're on, especially those big woods ones. We're a fifth-generation family, owned and operated, a New Hampshire woolen textile manufacturer. They have over 106 years of woolen expertise, and they started manufacturing woolen socks, the Mountain Heritage ones, in New Hampshire in 2018 with the idea that a quality product, affordable pricing, and can be worn and loved from season to season, no matter what your experience level or skill is, so no one should feel uncomfortable or ill-prepared in the outdoor community. Having a reliable gear is one of the first steps towards a lifetime of passion or whatever activity it is. And my caveat to that is you got to wear your woolies. Cotton is death.
I hope he doesn't mind us saying it, but Kevin's cousin, and you folks might have seen it on the Big Woods Bucks page. We reposted it there. But Kevin's cousin, Eli, shot a 155-inch deer?
I scored it at 150 and 4/8, but then after shrinkage and whatnot, he had it scored for the New York State buck.
In any event.
It was huge.
Slammer,
It was 145.
And the track was small. What did you say? You were like, that's not even something I'd follow.
Yeah, I mean, he
right?
had sent me a picture of it, and because it had crossed the road, and when he drove that road, and it really didn't look like, it wasn't anything like the buck me and you had talked about on the previous podcast. Nothing even compared to that, but it had a monstrous rack. I mean, a buck we'd all dream of shooting, and it weighed 150 pounds, 152 pounds.
Yeah.
Quick observation too from what Mark was saying about the pace that he goes. It's actually funny. It occurred to me. So I've tracked with Rick, and I mean, I could go on all day about what a insane, experience that is. I mean, we went 18 miles one day, then 10 the next, and it blew my knee out. And basically, that was the end of my season. And it was like great conditions when I got home, and I could barely hunt. But and that happened the prior year too.
Yeah.
Or the first time I followed him. In any event, I've learned to slow down. I've hunted with Kevin, and he's constantly like, slow down. He's like, stop, slow down.
Yes.
So he does the same thing you do. And I wonder, though, now hearing you say it, because you grew up still hunting southern New York, and you grew up still hunting.
Yes.
And I think you both go at a still hunting pace when you're on the track.
And he does too. He's
And
a
it's
little
like,
more.
It's just a solid, just constant like this, just a still hunting pace, and you're still hunting.
I have
you
a
happen to be on a track.
I have a really good thing about and I had told you this when we were standing in the parking lot the other day talking. This year, I finally, the last couple years, but this year especially, I really started being able to read the track more because I'm still kind of new to tracking. I've really only been doing it religiously for the last few years. And this year, I really started to get the knack of reading the track a lot better. When I went to Maine, I think it was the second or third day I was there. It was the second day I was there. Got on this really nice buck, and I had him dead in my mind. Like he was dead. He was doing everything. He was alone. He was doing everything that Joe Donito talks about. He's, he's feeding and this and that. He had been on the highway, and now he's in the kitchen, and I just had him so dead, and I was so wound up. I was literally taking one step and just standing there because I knew I was going to kill him. I had it in my head that deer was dead, and when he came out of the bushes, I was so wound up, I just blew my cork. You know what I mean? I dumped the whole gun, never touched him. I did have a gun that I don't think I was shooting. It wasn't fitting me, whatever. But I think that's one thing to be careful of is when you are like in that instance of the deer's right there, is not to get too wound up. Like Mark was saying, if he just walks that one step or that regular pace all the time, he can relax and then you can kill the deer. When you get wound up, you're not gonna get him.
Yeah, I agree with that. Wouldn't you say you slowed down, Austin, too?
Oh, yeah, because I'd get all wound up like he was talking about.
Me too.
And I'm creeping. I got death creep on. I'm like, I'm going to kill him.
Yeah.
He's dead.
Heart's pounding.
I'm
You
there.
haven't even seen him, and
Yeah, well, I'm there, right? I still haven't seen him, and I think to myself in my own head, man, I should have seen him by now. He ain't here.
Yeah.
Then I take 2 normal steps, and he goes.
Going.
And I'm like, okay. So now I just go really slow and just take my time.
Yep.
Like I always, like I said, when I'm still hunting, I follow like a route that I plan out.
Yep.
My route just becomes a deer track. I just poke along on that, and I'm either going to catch him or I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
But at least if I do catch him, I'm going slow.
That is a good way. That's a great way of framing it.
Rope becomes a deer track.
Yeah, instead of just going from signpost rub to signpost rub that I normally would do, I just follow his track and just take my time.
Be off to the side because he turned off to feed, or he could be, somewhere, but you're still hunting at the end of the day.
I mean, I get revved up sometimes because depending on what he's doing or how he's acting, I might do different things. Like, might actually make a bunch of noise and like grunt at him, try to get him to turn around and come back. Or if I know where he might be going, I might run over the mountain or around, try to cut him off or something.
Right.
But usually, if I'm just following them, I just follow them.
Mm-hmm.
So to finish my hunt, so what happened was, because all the stuff we're talking about is going to factor in. So just imagine that you have a bunch of small ravines covered in spruce that are 30 feet high, rolling all over the place. And it's just a drainage ditch down into a vley, but it's thick, and there's 6 inches of packy snow. Beautiful stuff's dripping off the trees. It couldn't be better. Mm-hmm. And so now I'm totally in my... I literally I get out of Death Creep, and this is where most people would be in Death Creep. And I was talking on the phone. I was like, he's right here. He's going to be right here. Putting the phone away and relaxing. And I'm just like, I take 3 steps and I relax my body. I hold my gun down. I don't have it like this like I used to. Now, I know this is totally unconventional. Mm-hmm. And then I just kind of move my upper body, because I know they're going to look, they're low. So they're going to look at my legs. So I do a lot of this kind of swaying back and forth and looking, getting different angles. And then I just look, and there he is. He's 10 yards from me, 10, 15 yards. And he's laying down, and there's a tree covering his head. It's like a tree with a split and snow in the middle, so I can't see his head. So I don't know if it's a doe. I've made that mistake, right? You're looking, and you think that it's the buck, and the buck is over here where you can't see, and there's doe. So then I'm like, wait a minute. Is that a wet log? Right? It's perfect. It's a deer body, but I can't see legs. All I see is brown and white snow, so it's stark. And then I'm like, well, I have a scope. So I crank it up to 6 power. I got that Skinner scope, and I put it on it, and I hold tight, and I can see him breathing. That's how close I am.
Wow.
I can see, that it heaving. And I'm like, okay, it's a deer. It is most certainly a deer. I crank it down to 1 power, and I didn't have my GoPro. The one day of the whole season, I didn't have my GoPro. So I got my phone in my pocket. I'm like, I'm not going to blow it. If the wind shifts, I got no chance. So I'm like, how am I going to get him to stand up? Now, this is what's important. I thought that buck would have at least an 8-point rack like that, based on the track, the width, the stagger, but mostly the fact that he was dragging his feet in 6 inches of snow. I mean, he was a skier. He wasn't huge, didn't have a huge stagger, but his stride, even when he was feeding, was long. Well, it ended up, I'm going to call this deer stilts, because when I took the picture of him, he has the longest legs with the biggest feet, but I didn't know that. So I had to make a decision. I'm going to shoot this buck because there's a lot of spruce between me and him. I'm still kind of having an angle with my gun, and I'm like, if I hesitate at this distance, I got no chance. I got one chance. So I got the grunt call. I put the grunt call in my mouth, got the scope on him, hit the grunt call. Well, let me tell you something. It was a buck, but I never really got a good look at his rack. Now, he ended up being a 2.5-year-old, about 139 pounds, 140 pounds, with a rack like this, just a basket rack. I just saw antlers, like base antlers, because that thing, I hit that grunt call. It's one of those loud, big ones. He jumped, spun around that tree like an acrobat, landed, and was like a bullet in my face. And I just put a bullet right in his chest right then. Because I was like, is this thing going to attack me? And I had the 360 buck hammer, and it just rocked him. And then I hit him 3 more times running. Or 2 more times.
You should see the blood trail.
He sent me pictures of it.
Yeah,
I have like a 2.5 minute
crazy.
video.
Yeah,
and it's like buckets.
It's gonna be in the video. We got the blood trail. But that's a case where I had to make the decision, and that was the buck I got. If in the early season would I shot him? Probably. If it was the same situation with the same track with the information I had. So a lot of the guys, I hear so much apologizing happening. Who gives a crap? I mean, you're in the woods, you're doing something that is so hard. It's so hard. The Adirondacks, I think, are the toughest place to kill a good buck in the world. Mm-hmm. And people, they'll go to task with me. I'm like, have you hunted the central Adirondacks, on a tough season without snow? Try it and see how successful you are.
Very little.
It's freaking brutal.
Yes.
It is brutal, but it's awesome. And you just can't be that choosy. So that's the lesson, I guess, is you'd be shocked at the type of racks one way or the other. And God is going to give you what he's going to give you.
The funny thing is, like, when I got your inReach message, he said he shot one in his bed. And I'm like, all right, like, I'm on my way because I knew where he was parking his car. So I go running back down in there. Well, I crossed his tracks twice where he was tracking this buck. And both times I'm looking at the buck track. I'm like, oh, he's a pretty good one. Like, I'm looking at the track. And I'm thinking the same thing. And I walked up and I was like, I mean, he's still a good buck, but it wasn't as big as I thought he was going to be.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to be, at least like that one at West Shot or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah. A 3.5-year-old or better, but a good one.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is a message to everybody who's just getting started or wants to get started hunting the Adirondacks. Keep your expectations low. And, like, that's a great buck. I look at your buck and, like, that's amazing. I've been waiting for 5 years now to see something like that.
Right.
No joke. I mean, really, I've passed on a dozen spikes, but seeing just, like, an actual racked buck still hunting or tracking in the Adirondacks, and I've missed probably half a dozen, too.
Yeah. You've had good encounters.
Yeah. And actually, that's a good segue into what do we want it to be the next part of this episode, which is what is your top advice to somebody? And for me, by far, it's shooting. I shot my first buck my first year hunting, my 5th day probably ever hunting. It was 60 yards away. I had a scoped marlin, and I got a double long shot. Because it was so easy for me, I never really put the time in to shoot a lot. I'd just go to the range, once and, just before the season. I'd shoot 2 or 3. All right, it's on. I'm good to go. I never practiced at all. And that would be, and I learned over the subsequent years missing bucks. I think I've missed bucks every year. Since then, when I went with you, I missed one.
Yep.
Before that, 2 weeks prior to that, I'd missed one on bare ground. I missed one with Rick twice. No, I missed one. Anyway, I missed a ton of bucks. That would be my advice to somebody just getting started is like, and I don't think it's talked about enough, frankly. And I think sometimes when you hear Hal or Rick, it's like you forget. I forget anyway, and I have to remind myself, like, these guys are incredible shots. Like, incredible shots. Just and like how and they were making fun of Hal on one of the last podcasts where he was talking about shooting his main buck this year because he was like, yeah, he was 100 yards away, and I put the peep on him. It's like, what do you want? And Joe was like, what? Like, Hal, that's insane. That's like an amazing shot. Like, I wouldn't even be able to see it with a scope. He's like,
right.
So it's like they take that for granted, I think. So, and I won't do that anymore. You got to practice shooting. So, but I figure we could go around if everybody wants to give their one big tip or two big tips.
Go ahead.
Be comfortable with what you're shooting, because everybody, like, and you kind of just touched on it, and like everyone grows up shooting something in particular, and everyone's built differently, and everyone has, different things that they prefer. Some guns shoot more like a shotgun. Some sit up higher, like a bar sits up high, like a Marlin.
Yep.
And most of your lever actions, where like obviously a 7600, 760 is more of like a shotgun, 870. So everybody's different, and to kind of go along with all that is you get too much information from all the books, the podcasts, the seminars, the videos, the everything, articles. Like, it's endless, especially with the internet and the amount of like influencers and everything else now. It's endless. So getting into it, like, you want to learn it all, and I'm the same way because I do it with everything that I'm interested in as well. But you get so overwhelmed that, like he's talked about, like, you lose who you are and what you are good at and what you're used to, and it can really cause a problem because you could be forcing something that isn't good for you, and you'll miss a lot of bucks because of it. Like, my best advice would be read Hal's book, volume 1 and 2, read one of Larry's books, and listen to Joe Janito's seminar. Then pick up your favorite rifle, and then go for a walk in the mountains.
Yep.
Stay away from the rest of it. Do that for the first season and just get as much experience as possible. Then you can add more. But too much information and trying to do too many different things is going to hurt you.
Yeah.
It's great advice.
Analysis paralysis is how it likes to say.
Yeah.
By the way, we have that new tracking guide that we just came out. Did you guys get a look at that?
Oh, yeah. I had one when they first came out.
Yeah, I got the first one, and I got Hal to sign it. CEO privilege. That's pretty neat, actually. If you're just getting started, who am I kidding? I'm going to take one with me, too. I've been doing it 5 years. It's got info there about, like, what's going on, and you can, like, refer to it, and it's, like, helpful because I don't know how many times I've been out there, and I'm like, I wish I could call Hal right now and see what I should do here.
I have called him. I'll like pull out my phone. I'll actually have service, and I'm like, oh, hell yeah. Hey, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, you get that real time advice, but that is helpful. But I mean, I think you make a good point. There's so much info out there, and I think Rodney Elmer had, I forget where he'd said it, but it stood out to me. It's like, in this space where there's so much information, he's like, look, you just find a track, follow it, and then go up and shoot it. Like, it's not that difficult. I mean, it is difficult. Tracking is weird to me in that it's simultaneously the most difficult way to hunt and the easiest.
Yes.
And the meaning, it's an incredibly steep learning curve. There's so much information there's just so much you learn doing it. It's incredibly physically taxing. It's mentally taxing. You expose yourself to the elements like you wouldn't believe. You put yourself really in life-threatening situations, as you know, potentially life-threatening situations in the worst kind of weather. And it's really hard, but then when you get good at it, there's no easier way to hunt. There's no easier way to kill a big buck. I was just listening to Joe Donito, and he's like, look, if you could give me another way to consistently kill a massive buck, like, I'm all ears, but like, this is the best way to do it if you get good at it. So, anyway, that was a bit of a tangent, but yeah, I think you make a good point. Just learn the basics, get in the woods, get used to being in the woods. I think my first season I happened to kill a buck my first season, but my first 2 or 3 after that even were just like getting used to being in the woods carrying a gun, especially if you've never hunted before. I mean, I was always in the outdoors fishing or backpacking, but like just getting used to being in the woods, looking for deer and having a gun in your hand is so much of it.
Yeah, let the deer teach you.
Right.
They're going to teach you the best.
Definitely.
You know.
You got anything, Kev?
I think you guys kind of nailed it right there. I mean, I would say the number one thing I did wrong, I don't know if I can really say this on the podcast, but my dad put a rifle in my hand when I was 11, and he let me start deer hunting.
Hello, CPS?
Nah. So, and I know
we all started.
I know a lot of guys started that way, and I hope to start my kids like that. But anyway, when I was,
it's 12 now.
Well, not with a gun, right? I think it's 14.
Yeah, I think they lowered it.
Oh, did they really? Yeah. That's news to me. But anyway, I think shooting was my biggest problem when I was, first starting. I saw so many huge bucks. My dad would chase me these bucks. I remember my 14th birthday, he chased me a slammer buck, and I never pulled the trigger even on that one because I was actually back then I was scared of shooting at running deer because of worrying about shooting a doe, because they're running past you. And then after that encounter, my dad had told me, if you see antler, you saw antler. Don't second guess yourself. If you think you saw his rack, start shooting. But anyway, definitely the shooting. I missed so many big bucks because of not being ready, never shooting my gun except on sandbags. You know what I mean? We'd always just put a target out at 60 yards or whatever, 75 yards, and I'd shoot 10 bullseyes and off to the woods I'd go, but I was shooting on a bench rest,
Yeah.
It's totally different. And then the only other thing I would say is, like, you're a good example of this, I think, is just letting your screw ups teach you, I guess, because I've seen you come light years from where you were,
for sure.
Not too long ago, really. Mm-hmm. And yeah, you've messed up on a lot of bucks lately, the last couple years, but I think those ones are teaching you so much. You're learning so fast. That's how I learned, is just by missing these bucks, screwing up on these bucks, whatever. And I think that's the best way to learn is honestly screwing up. There's nothing that's going to teach you better. Not reading a book. You can get a lot of information off the web, reading books, teaching yourself that way, but nothing can replace being out in the field. There's no way. So
totally.
I think. Go ahead.
I just want to add there too, though, relying on people for advice, because I've relied on every team member so much for advice. I'm constantly hitting them up, especially about bow hunting with Neil and Jeff and stuff. And I want to invite, the viewers, you folks, like, you just look up our emails. I mean, they're on the site, or send an email to like info@bigwoodsbucks.com if you have a question, or message us on Facebook. I want to invite everybody to do that, because that's what we're all about at Big Woods Bucks, is educating through entertainment, and helping you folks be successful. So I just wanted to put that in there.
So I think that for me, it's a little bit of a backwards. I have to explain a little bit. So because I grew up feral in the woods, I didn't realize, honestly, until now, probably the last couple of years, I didn't realize that my skill set was already high when I met Hal. And it was really problematic. Let me explain why. I thought, because I read Big Bucks with the Benoit Way, I think that's what it's called, right? That famous book by Bryce Tousley. And I had already been hunting for 30 years or whatever it was. No, not 30 years, 25 years, let's say. And was very successful. Very successful. And I had started going up north and seeing deer and shooting at deer and missing and stuff. But I was getting my feet wet in the big woods. And I didn't know it, but I already had everything I needed. But I read that book, and Bryce made it sound like the mountain buck was this elusive, magical. I'm surprised he didn't say they have. I was going to swear, but wings, right? Yeah. And that that there's somehow Pegasus deer, and the swamp buck, and then the ridge buck. I'm like, really? There's such a thing? And I've been chasing deer since I was 7 years old. Literally, I've tackled deer. When I was a kid, I tackled deer. I actually grabbed a hold of physical deer, and I was that good. My brother was like, "You are the most amazing. How do you see these things?" Because I spent all my time in the woods. So then I read these books, and it's like I get lost for 7 years. I don't shoot a buck. No, 9 years. I didn't shoot a buck in the Adirondacks for 9 years. I missed 12 good bucks because I became a head case. And I thought, and then it all came full circle a few years ago. I started getting more and more successful. And me and Austin were on the phone one day, and I said, what I realize is now I'm doing the same things I was doing when I was 12. Mm-hmm. I'm doing the same things now with the walking, the observing. I hunt with my eyes. I don't hunt with my feet. I'm not Rick Labby. I will never be. I don't want to be. I want to be Mark Scheeren. So that was a massively wonderful experience, because I'm not kidding you. I see a lot of bucks every year. I see a lot of deer. I pass on deer. I enjoy it. I don't care. I don't care about social media. And I'm saying it this way because I can't tell you how many people call me. And I don't want this podcast for people to be listening and saying, "Oh, I got to do that." No, just Austin said it. You said it. You said it. Be you. Figure the deer will teach you everything, and they're not elusive. They're just animals. Jeff Paradis says it all the time. He goes, "They're just deer, man. They're not magical. Mm-hmm. Stop putting them on this ridiculous pedestal." And big woods bucks are no different. They're rangier, sure, but if you have some physicality, if you have the ability to walk 5 miles, 4 miles, you can kill big woods bucks every year. You can. And still hunting is super effective, especially if you're a slow guy like me. Mm-hmm. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. So don't discount that. Tracking really was a tough thing for me because I screwed it up. I took my skill set and I threw it out the window for somebody else's. Dumb. And I threw out my gun for somebody else's. I got a pump because I thought that's what I was supposed to have. And it was this horrendous thing that I went through. Now, there was a benefit to all that mistaking, and that was that I became an expert in equipment, guns. I became a gunsmith. All this stuff that I really don't need now, But I just really want to.
Helps.
Yeah, it does. It does. I just want everybody to know that your path can be your own, and the deer will teach you everything.
That's definitely kind of where I've gone this year. It's just by hearing that story over. I've heard it a few times talking to you. I think that's going to change the way I hunt in the future, because the last few years I've tried to be other people. You know what I mean? Yes. I read the books, same kind of thing. Got the gun, and I'm not that good, not that person, whatever. So I think there's a huge lesson there. Yeah, for sure.
And this is almost going to become a theme about it, because I want to make it clear. It might become a theme of the podcast, but just again, to get back to different styles, I can't emphasize that enough. Mm-hmm. And Hal, in the first book, he has chapters in sitting. He has chapters in still hunting, chapters in tracking.
There's no wasted day.
You don't need to be
right.
Joe DeNito.
That's right.
Great guy. We love him. You don't need to be him. My cousin, who we'll have on eventually, as hardcore a big woods hunter as anybody you'll find. The guy sits, and 4 out of the last 5 years, he's killed really nice bucks. 1 year a few years ago, he killed a 10-pointer sitting. And it's a discipline. Like, I remember one morning, I had left the Adirondacks and gone down and hunted the southern zone with my buddy Brendan, and it was 3 degrees in Columbia County, which means he was probably sitting in -7 degrees. It was the last day of the season, and he's sitting
Right.
like with not much clothes on. I mean, he's sitting.
Didn't he shoot one that day?
Degrees. He shot a beautiful 8-pointer.
Bob
And it's
Dunbar.
like,
Bob
yeah.
Dunbar is the same with team member Bob Dunbar. I've hunted with him together since we were 10 years old. That dude, he's like, I'm going to go up on that hill, and then I'm going to sit for 2 hours, and I'm going to come down, and I'm going to kill a buck somewhere in there. And I'm like, okay, Now I've known not to doubt him because he does. All of a sudden, there's a giant 140 class 9-pointer, and then 120 class 8-pointer, and then 7 other bucks in the first 10 years we went up there. So Bob didn't read the books. Bob took what we learned as feral children at living in the woods. He adopted it and literally did the identical thing in the big woods. And he killed bucks every single year while I shot none.
Right.
And the difference was he didn't read a single book.
And that beautiful muzzleloader buck sitting, right, that we got video about on YouTube.
Yeah.
On YouTube.
I'll tell you what, the first time I went to Maine, Bob and I were hunting on one of the roads up there, like about a mile apart. And there was snow, but it was crunchy. But I was like, I'm going to go tracking. So I'm like hustling up this raspberry road. And I'm going for maybe 45 minutes, an hour. And I hear bang, 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 bang. And I'm like, man, that sounded like it was Bob. But maybe not. So I go the whole day and come out at the end of the day. And sure, it was Bob. And he said, he's like, I'm not going to go tracking. I'm just going to go poking along on the crust and hit the grunt call. Just a couple steps,
And there was-
grunt,
it
couple
was
steps, grunt, because
decent.
it's too crunchy.
Yeah.
And he was going along and watched his buck stand right up out of a blowdown and just started blazing away.
He's got a
That's
bar,
amazing.
too.
I can't wait to get
Does he?
Bob on, by the way.
Oh, he's
I know.
awesome.
I know. Bob is.
Man.
But
He is.
totally, everyone else is out trying to track on crunch. There's only 2 people that I knew at the time that were trying to still hunt. One was Nick with a guy that he was guiding, and he shot a buck, and Bob.
Yeah.
And Bob shot a buck.
That goes back to exactly what he was just saying, is do what you're good at.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah, he never read a book.
Right.
Didn't care about any of it. He would ask me questions, but he's just like, I'm going to go do what I do.
Yep.
And it was like within
amazing.
days, big bucks were dropping. I was like, what is he doing? And then finally I kind of got the memo after a decade. And he's like, I just keep doing the same shit we did when we were kids. And I'm like, oh, I think I'll start doing that too. And then stuff started dropping. Yeah.
Unreal.
All right.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been a good conversation. Any final thoughts to wrap this thing up?
I
The
think
only-
that was awesome.
Kevin, thanks for coming out.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thanks
it
for
was
having
awesome.
me.
You
Thanks
gonna
for
go be
having me.
scouting tomorrow, or
What's
you,
that?
You gonna be scouting for the upcoming season in the next few days?
Oh, I've been out in the woods quite a bit already, so
Nice.
I'm
Yeah,
actually almost done scouting for
Are
the
ya?
season. But
All right.
Let me just say, anybody has an addiction, this is a serious topic. I was the creator of the first non-12-step program, and you don't have to go to meetings, you don't have to go to rehabs, you don't have to do any of that. Go to thefreedommodel.org.
awesome.
Yep. So go check that out if you or a loved one or anyone you know, for that matter, has an issue. All right.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thank you so much, guys. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
We'll keep working on that catchphrase. But until then, shoot straight and shoot a lot. Shoot often and
Blaze away.
blaze away. Just shoot. Just don't stop.
For the love of God, shoot.
Just shoot. All right. See ya. Thanks for tuning in to the Adirondack Hunt Podcast. You can find more episodes at bigwoodsbucks.com. Check out bigwoodsbucks.com for the latest gear, including our famous American-made wool hunting jackets, wool hunting fanny packs, and wool hunting pants, along with books, tracking guides, and logo wear. See you next time.